everyone. It's a pleasure to introduce you to Felipe Vieira, Felipe Alexandre. Felipe did his PhD, and he finished recently, and he's a recent postdoc here in a visiting position. Felipe did his PhD in the Federal University of Alagoas in Brazil Northeast, next to the coast, in Maceió. And Felipe he's been working during his PhD and currently in using new and innovative methods to assess cultural ecosystem services or the status of biodiversity, etc. So I hope he will give you a glimpse of some of the things you can do using the social media and other data about the society from a perspective, from a Brazilian neotropical perspective. Thank you, Felipe.
Thank you all for being here. As Joaquin said, I am a biologist. My background is in biology, but I always have been working with traditional and the more recent methods for assessing cultural services, which is a bit about social sciences. Talking about the traditional, it's based on social sciences, and then innovative is based on computer sciences. So I'm a biologist that is walking on this really thin line between three different areas. So it's been very interesting, but also very challenging for me. And today, as Joaquin said, I want to present you some of the methods for assessing cultural services, but especially the innovative methods can be used for a range of things in a range of areas. And I want you to be thinking about your own works as I talk, because this can be really useful for a range of different areas. So yeah, I'm gonna make a brief conceptualization of ecosystem services and cultural services, and then I'm gonna pass through the traditional assessments, how people get cultural services into account in environmental sciences, and how it has been done more recently. So this is the basic and more known framework for explaining ecosystem services. It was made by a huge group, and it has the name of Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. Many of you have heard about it, I guess. And it states that the things that nature provides to us have links with different strengths with the constituents of well-being, such as security and health. And we need these ecosystem services to have a good life. That's the whole frame in a nutshell. And the ecosystem services, they have these four classic categories, right? The provisioning services, which is like the basic stuff that we have, like food, water. Provisioning, supporting, which are the most basic soil formation and primary production. Regulating, like climate regulation, disease regulation. And then we have the cultural services, which is the immaterial part of the benefits that nature gives to us, like inspiration and appreciation of nature. All of these have a huge impact on our mental and physical well-being and generate value. But because cultural services are not material, it's much more difficult to measure. You can measure food, you can measure water, but for things like spirituality and cultural heritage, how do we measure these things? It's a bit tricky, and that's because cultural ecosystem services it's a little bit behind in relation to the other categories, because it's difficult to grasp what they really are, what they really mean to the specific populations. It also changes a lot. So it's not easy at all to account for this in environmental decision-making. So we have this classic framework for ecosystem services. It's from 2005. And since then, a lot of other systems of classification for ecosystem services have arisen. Maybe the common international classification of ecosystem services, one of the most used by now. But then you have lots of others. The IPBES people have came with the notion of nature's contributions to people, which is a little bit similar. But they argue that this framework of them account better for contextual relations, like indigenous people values. There has been much debate about that. If another framework with another terminology, meaning basically they made the same thing, but with slight difference. There has been some debate whether it is needed. But yes, we have dozens of other systems of classification for ecosystem services, but definitely these two are the most classical ones. And to think about ecosystem services, to really comprehend what they are, it's not easy, but I really like the ecosystem services cascade because it helps us to put all the things in boxes. So these are the ecosystem services. And basically what they're saying is that it comes from ecosystem structure and function, not the function from ecology, which is a very well-established concept. And there's been some debate also on the use of this word function here. But the important thing here is that the structure of the ecosystems, the geophysical features and the biological features, they generate these services. And the services will be transformed by us. This is us. Ecosystem services only have meaning to be explained with people, because it's people who is receiving the ecosystem services, and we are creating, the ecosystem services generate benefits and value for us. So it's very it depends on us to exist, ecosystem services. So, okay, this is a photo from where I live, where Richard lives as well, in Maceió, Alagoas. It's the best part of Brazil, right, Richard? Yeah. Yes, because we have the most beautiful beaches, and yes, it's warm, and etc. So this is the protected area, and I have been thinking about ecosystem services and cultural ecosystem services in terms of applying them to protected areas management, basically. But also natural areas which are not protected. So it's important to consider all kinds of cultural aspects of the natural areas. So, and we have many. We have nature appreciation. We have opportunities to recreate. We have spiritual values, which is really tricky to identify and to understand, because each community, each people will value things differently. So this is maybe the most tricky part, inside the tricky part, that is cultural services. So yeah, different people perceive ecosystem services in their landscape in different forms. This is a paper of ours from 2017, where we see that residents have very different view from outsiders about their landscape, about the places where they can recreate, but also about all other categories of cultural ecosystem services as well. They know better the places they go. They have another relation with their spaces, right? So this is a good review of the methods that have been used to assess cultural ecosystem services throughout the time. It's a literature review, and it's from 2019, if I'm not wrong. And here we can see what we're gonna talking about today. This is questionnaires. It's the most, interview is the most used method to assess cultural ecosystem services, but because they are the early ones. So most people are using questionnaires, interviews they're basically going to the places and asking people, what do you value here in your landscape, in your place? Where do you recreate? What are the places that you go to appreciate nature, to appreciate the landscape? But then we also have social media based, which is the second part of the talk. And I guess that if this work is done today in 2015 to 2025, this bar will be huge, maybe, I don't know, it's gonna be, I bet it's gonna be like here. Because there is a boom in social media usage, and there is a boom in scientists using social media data to unveil these sort of values, cultural ecosystem services, because now you don't have to go to the place to ask people what they value in the landscape. They are taking pictures, they are writing in the internet, and we can analyze this huge lots of data that is being generated daily to grasp, have a clue on what people value and where and how. So yeah, questionnaires are really tricky to do because you have to be careful with a lot of things. You have to have a really clear idea of what your population is. Are you studying the whole population of Spain, or are you studying the fishermen? The fishermen which use a particular tool for fishing, I don't know. You have to have this clearly in your mind. And then you will calculate your sample size. I don't want to get too much into this to not upset the social scientists in the room, but it's just to show that it's really tricky to make questionnaires, and you have to have all these things really well. So when you choose your sample size based on your target population, you have to be sure that you will represent all the subpopulations, you will have a good gender balance and so on. And then you will calculate the sample size based on your entire population, but you also have to have a good spatial distribution to make sure that your data is representative. You also have to train very much with your assistants to make sure that everyone is asking the same thing in the same form. Because if we are asking the same thing in different forms, we're gonna mess with the data, and at the end, you're gonna regret to not having the extensive meetings that are necessary to align with everyone how the things are gonna be done. And then after this, you are ready to go to the ethics committee. You will present your project to your university's, your institution ethics committee. It's a pretty standard thing around the world. All educational research institutes have guidelines for this type of research using people. And then you will pilot. And then once you are in the field, you will have to control for many problems that will happen and that can mess with your data. This is our colleague Inae doing a questionnaire in Piauí, another state of Alagoas. And I liked this photograph because she was interviewing this woman, but then because we are outsiders and few people go to this place, all the family got together and started talking, and she asked the question and everyone answers, but she really only wanted the answer from one person. So it can be really tricky, and you have to control for all these things. Okay, this is a case study. This is in the Amazon. where we live is right here in the coast. So we travel a lot to the interior of the Amazon. It's in the Juruá River. I don't know if you have heard about. It's one of the most easternmost and most isolated places in the Amazon. It's almost near Peru. So we've made 125 questionnaires with the people inside and outside protected areas in River Juruá. And because we are using questionnaires, we are able to get really deep on what people think about cultural services. And one of the ideas of this project was to link the ecosystem services to the ecosystem structures. It's not ecosystem structures, I rather prefer calling them geodiversity plus biodiversity. Because all these elements are linked stronger or more weakened with the cultural services categories. So this is a thing that can only be achieved with questionnaires, with social media. You can do it with social media, but with questionnaires you go much deeper. Remember from the cascade of ecosystem services, we have function right here. You can design your questionnaire to measure this, but it can be tricky as well. And for each relation between the ecosystem and the ecosystem services, we, as people, as interacting with nature, we're gonna derive benefits and values. It's not have been done in this research, but just to show to you how this relates with the cascade framework for ecosystem services. Yeah, but then questionnaires are difficult to do, as you have seen. They are costly. They require people to go to the field lots of times, and we are usually restricted to a really often small area. So social media gives an alternative for all these factors, but it has its problems as well, as you can imagine. Well, huge amounts of data are being posted by people in the various kinds of platforms, so people can post images, they can write on Flickr on Twitter about what they think about nature, about the spaces. So it can really, downloading this bunch of data and analyze can really give us a hint on how people are using the places, when, and why. With this data, we can do sentiment analysis, we can measure the salience of distinct topics by analyzing the texts and the images and the videos. So here we have, this paper is from 2015, and it introduces the types of things that we can measure with social data. So when you publish something on Instagram, let's say, we can have measures of social engagement. We can see the number of likes, the number of comments that it received, but we can also have a measure of sentiment. We can analyze if people are talking good or badly about the topic, the subject, or the place that you are representing in the image. And we are not talking about one publication. We are talking about millions of publications that we can download, not from Instagram because they have impaired, they do not allow us to download a bunch of data, but that's how they are. We have another alternative social medias that we can do it, like Flickr. And Flickr and image analysis is being what I have been doing, and that's what I will talk about in this talk. I am not doing this analysis of this, the number of commentaries or likes, I'm really into the picture, what the picture is showing, and what they're showing, and how distributed in space and time it is, because each post, it comes with a geotag. So you can know the exact location where the picture was taken, and the exact location of the place that the person uploaded the picture to Instagram, to Flickr, in my case. So we can select an area. That's basically what we have been doing. We can select an area and download all the photos that were taken inside our polygon. Let's say that we want to see all the photos inside inside Madrid. We can select Madrid and download these millions and millions of photos. We're gonna define a time frame. Let's say we want the photos from 2010 to now. So we're gonna have these photos, but how do we actually assess what's in the content of the photo, what the photo is saying to us? We can do this manually, but I guess for Madrid, it would not be possible because it would be millions and millions of photos. But that's how it was done some time ago. Or we can ask computers to analyze the image for you and then to translate for you what each image is showing. Well, talking about manual classifications, this is what we have done in that beach photo that I showed to you. It's in this protected area in Alagoas, where we live. So it's pretty huge protected area, as you can see here. And we downloaded, I guess, 2,000 photographs, and we analyzed each of them manually. We have some rules to analyze them, to classify them into our cultural services categories. Like this photo is depicting recreation. This photo is about is a broad view of the landscape, so let's classify it as landscape appreciation. So we could separate the photos into ecosystem services categories, and then we could see in space where are the hotspots of each category. And this is very, very much informative for local management in the local scale. But then if we are doing this for a larger area, we cannot spend 1 month clicking in links of the photos and classifying them manually. So that's where computers enter. We can ask them to. We have, in fact, been training these computers, these computer vision algorithms to do these classifications for us, right? When we enter a CAPTCHA, we are actually training this for Google or for whatever. So nowadays, we have a bunch of computer vision algorithms and models to identify what's in an image. If I take a picture of you here and put in one of these algorithms, it can return for me keywords that represent what is in the image. It's gonna say museum, maybe because of the collections, and it's gonna say meeting, or I don't know. It's gonna come out with a few words that represent what's in my picture. I have been using Google Cloud Vision, but I'm really more interested now in this open source model because it's open source, and we can train, we can give inputs for the new versions, and we have sure that there is not a billionaire who will sell it or close it at any time. But yeah. And then we have AI, which I'm not into, but I think it's gonna change this whole story pretty soon. It's already doing. So yeah, in my works, I have been using Google Cloud Vision, but it's paid. I think it was $3 for each 1,000 photographs that I sent to them to analyze. So if you have millions and millions of photos, it's going to be quite a significant amount of money. But yeah, I had no other alternative at the time. YOLO was really crappy. This is an example of YOLO, the open source image detection. Yeah, this is the example that's in their page, but actually, yeah, it's been used for traffic control and controlling the number of people coming and going into wagons of trains, and etc. But then it can be really imprecise sometimes. The good thing is that we have a measure of certainty that the object that it's identifying the photo is really in the photo. So we can select only for the objects that it gives a high score for us. Here it has only 6% of certainty that this is a train. Of course, it's not a train. Another example, boat, person. This is really interesting. What's this? I don't know how it identified it as person, but well, I should say, this was the version 8. Now YOLO is in the version 12. So I stopped on 8. I would really want to know more about the new developments of YOLO, how it is performing now. But again, we always have this measure of certainty that it gives to us. So in this case, it would give really low levels of certainty for this, so we could just take it off. Yeah. But then with this automatic analysis, we are now capable of doing global level analysis of images, right? We only need the data set, and we can run some analysis to automatically retrieve keywords for each image, and then we only have to sort them out to make groups of our cultural services categories, but whatever category we want, right? So this is another case study. In this, our study area was the whole coast of Brazil. It's really, really big. It has, in Brazil, our protected areas are classified basically in 2 types. The strictly protected areas, it's in Portuguese, sorry. The strictly protected areas, which are basically national parks and these more restrictive areas where you cannot use the resources directly. And then you have the sustainable use protected areas, which are usually open for traditional communities to make use directly of the resources. So in this huge area, we have 33 integral strictly protected areas and 60 sustainable use protected areas. And our question was, how is cultural services distributed in these 2 categories and in the unprotected areas as well? So here's an example of the iconic endangered animals that we have in Brazilian coast that obviously generate many cultural ecosystem services for us. Appreciation, we find them cute, and we feel good when we look at them. So yeah. We also have many of the national parks in Brazil, and I think, yeah, in the world, they are created to preserve these natural structures to appreciation. So it's hugely correlated to aesthetic appreciation. Another kind of assets. This is the methodological procedures that we had. We have the coastline, and then we selected 50 meters to the sea and 50 meters to the land. And this 100 meters stripe was our study area. So with this stripe, we've made a grid, And at the time, I just selected 50% of the grid. I excluded 50% randomized for computational purposes. My computer was not very good at the time. It's not now, but yeah. So we came out with 73,100 meters for 100 squares. This is equal to the area of Uruguay. I don't know if anyone has been in Uruguay, but it's not that big, but. And then in this huge area of our study, we found this number of photos and this number of users. I'm really bad at numbers in English. But yes, it's a quite expressive amount of images, right? So for each image, we had this information. An ID, of course. We don't want to lose track of each image. Okay, so here we have measures, timestamps for when the photos were taken. So this is the date and the hour of taking, and this is the date and hour of upload to the social media. So yeah, and then we have geotag information, which will allow us to spatialize the photos, and then we have the link for the photo in the website in Flickr. Yeah, same. And then we have the username of the person who took the photo. So that's what Google Cloud Vision makes. It's not an algorithm. It's an API platform from Google, which uses a bunch of different algorithms to. It's not really clear how they do this, but they use different algorithms to analyze the images of the photos. So it's not the best photo to give this example, but we can see that it's pretty much sure that there's a wave in the image, okay? It's pretty much sure that there's ocean in the image, and then it has some other lower levels of confidence for some other elements of the photo. So we did this for each of our, how many? 21,000 photos. So for each of the 21,000 photos, we had 5 keywords and the level of certainty. And all we had to do now is to apply some natural language processing, which is a text analysis, basically. So our text, our documents are our 5 words. It's not big documents. Each document is only 5 words, and they represent the photos, right? And what we did here was LDA, which is a technique to group the documents based on the words that they share. So words from the same topic will be in the same cluster. And here we only have to, okay, I want you to pay attention in the height of the cut here. This is where the clusters are cut. We can select the height that we want, and then we can have more or less clusters. More clusters mean more defined, more agreement between the words. So we can see here that we have this huge really group, which is probably many, many words that are unique in the data set. So it put everything together. So we can make many simulations with various heights, and we can look at our groups of photos and see if it makes sense, if the words that, the most frequent words in each group make sense for what we want. In our case, we want groups that represent social recreation. So we're gonna look at the clusters and we say, okay, this must be photos of nature, right? So it's nature appreciation. And then, yes, we categorize these clusters into our categories, but it's really our categories. You can be looking for anything that you want in these photographs. So this is examples of the images in different clusters, how we can group them. And then we can give names to our clusters, of course. So then we can, because we have the timestamp, the date and the hour of the day in which each image were taken, we can spatialize it. So here we're talking about the coast, right? So the coast is where families go in Brazil. They go to vacations, and we can see that there's a pike here in January, in December, because it's the opposite of Europe, right? In here, the pike would be here because it's the vacations time, I guess. Yeah. So yes, this discrepancy here, I remember Richard in his talk talking about failure and failing better the next time. That's what we are gonna try to do, because we should really control for the really exaggerated photographers who takes 300 photos in one day. So here is the total number of photographs in orange and the total number of users. But researchers who are doing this type of work nowadays, they are preferring to use a metric which is called photo user day, where we only consider one photo for person in each day. So we can control for these crazy guys who takes hundreds of pictures from his family in the beach and posts everything in the Flickr. By day of the week, right? At the weekends, we have a pike. This is somewhat expected, right? And we can see the distribution of the photos also by the hours of the day. So here you can see the lunch stop, right? And then we can spatialize each ecosystem service inside each category of protected area. Strict protected areas in green, sustainable use, and then we have the unprotected areas. So one interesting thing here is that it really aligns natural monuments is explicitly in the documentation of Brazilian legislation for the creation of national parks, which is the main category of strict protected areas. So it makes very much sense that we have more natural monuments in integral protected areas. But that's not really informative for local management, right? We can use the same technique to more restricted area. This is Gloucestershire. I don't know how to say it properly, but it's a smaller area. And here we can, we had a huge amount of photos, much more than in coastal Brazil, because their Flickr is much more popularized, certainly. This was the time frame. So we made the same procedure, separate the photos in clusters, in groups, and then we can see the distribution of photos of nature, photos of landscape. We can cross these with the spatial elements that a person who is in the area knows. And this is very informative for management, right? We can see the hotspots of biodiversity here in the, of course, institutions related to biodiversity. very expected. But also you can maybe identify areas with potential to biodiversity, and you can think on how to invest to boost this value there. Okay, landscape appreciation. A hill, of course. I don't know if these are, but anyone here know Gloucestershire? Okay. The thing here is that it's very informative for one person who really knows the area, right? Well, this analysis, as I made a question of pointing out to you, I wanted you all to think on your own works, because this can be really useful for a range of areas, right? You can enrich biodiversity data sets. Each photo, since we have the geolocation in timestamp, we can consider that each photo is an occurrence, right? You can enrich the biodiversity data sets. You can look for vector habitats. You can look for landslides, and you can apply these for a range of areas. So, but not all is good in social media, right? It has many, many shortfalls and weak points. First of all is that when using questionnaires to assess cultural services, you can really target your population. Using social media, we really don't know who people are. We can have a clue of the profile of the users of Flickr, of Instagram, but we don't really know who they are. So it's kind of a generalized population. Here in questionnaires, you are really sure that people meant what they are saying. And this is like we are inferring. Through social media, we are inferring that people are attributing that value to that place or that species. But it's really, it's not a direct approach, right? As I showed to you in that first graph, with questionnaires, we can go much deeper on how people value things, what is related to their values, how different aspects of nature, how ecosystem structure relates to the services. Here, social images, it's not very suitable for things like spirituality, cultural heritage. It's not gonna appear on social media, right? So it's pretty much good for landscape, biodiversity appreciation, and recreation, because this is the most common things that people will post on the internet. But people can, but not frequently post a photo that will give us a clue of their spirituality or cultural heritage. In questionnaires, yes, you can design your questions to assess this type of more intangible things. But then social media has a lot of advantages. It can be much, much cheaper. It can be made in a really larger scale than questionnaires. It's time consuming, but it's less time consuming than using questionnaires, right? If we are talking about the same area. Yeah. Okay, this is I would like to talk to you about your specific areas, and if you think that you can apply especially the images classification to your areas, and
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Felipe, for your lecture. Do you have any questions? First from somebody who is not, who hasn't got a prepared question. Alberto? Ah, yeah.
Thank you for the talk. I have two questions. The first one is how I suppose that you previously you filter the pictures, because I guess that you have a lot of that they are not interested for your questions. I mean, you show us, for example, pictures of singers and concerts. So maybe I missed from your talk. You mentioned it, but I missed it. But I mean, I imagine that you filter previous to your analysis. You filter the pictures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the first question.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah, I can answer that, and then you make the other question. We really use all the data set that we have for an area, because when we do this phase of the analysis, it will always come with a larger group of photographs that are really unique within the data set, which means that it has more keywords that are unique. So they are gonna all be grouped in one, which is gonna commonly be the biggest cluster. And this is really what we don't use. We call it others, and we don't use it because we want defined categories of things. Depending on the categories that you're interested about, maybe there are lots of photos here that are interesting to you. Yes.
Okay. And the second question is, do you think you will get different results if you use another social media? Because my experience is that the profile of the user is quite different, or slightly different from one social media to another. And for example, you show us a result that nature was linked to unprotected areas more significantly than to other areas, right? Mm-hmm. In one slide, there was a picture of there. So you have nature-related pictures are related to unprotected areas. Mm-hmm. I suppose that's related to the social media that you are using, that is FlickR. If you use another, maybe that the profile of the user is more nature focused, you will get those percentages slightly different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if we think it. To be honest, we are using Flickr because it has the most accessible API to get the data. Yes, it's only because of that. The idea would to be Instagram. Nowadays, tomorrow it can be another social media, but they have really strict regulations for us to get in the data. You can contract someone who is really expert on accessing this privacy data, but we cannot publish after it without risking getting a lawsuit. So it's really tricky. But yes, Flickr, in my opinion, is much more used by professional photographers. So it's gonna have more representations of biodiversity for sure than Instagram. Well, not for sure, I'm guessing, because since Instagram has been restricted for so many years, I have not getting access to the photos. But yes, for sure, this would all change. And this is not just about what people do in nature, it's much about the nature of the data source that we are using. Sure,
yeah, because I can imagine, for example, the spiritual aspect. In FlickR, it's very difficult to find it, but maybe in Instagram it appears, right? The spiritual. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know as well. Yeah. I think that social media in general is much towards social recreation, right? And appreciation of biodiversity and landscapes. And talking about my categories of cultural ecosystem service, my interest. Spirituality, I don't know if people would publish spirituality, which is a so sensitive thing, publishing in social media. Sorry.
That people publish a lot of things in social media.
Yeah. Yeah, one other interesting thing is that we are only getting the photos that are public, right? If people are the post is in a closed profile, we cannot have access. And then I guess that this has to do with the type of photos that we are getting as well, because spirituality, I imagine that would have a resistance of some people to publish it in an open profile, but it's all guess. Yeah. We don't have how to analyze Instagram or the most popular social media. But thanks.
Hi, Felipe.
Hey, thanks.
Yep, okay. Just a small question about the classification system, about the computer vision. Because I saw that like some elements like sky attribute an intrinsic value to landscape appreciation, but surely sky, it's in almost every photo, right? It's like, so how much sky has to be in a photo to make that connection with landscape appreciation, as otherwise we'll be biasing the classification of cultural elements towards landscape appreciation, simply because the sky is in almost every photo. I try to put the skies in every photo.
Yeah. It's really good question. As I said to you, before using this method, we were analyzing the photos manually, right? So we had this 9 squares rule, and then we would look for each of the squares of the images to classify. If there was not an element in focus, we would put as landscape. And if it has some organism, we would put nature appreciation. If it wasn't focusing in anything, landscape appreciation. In this sense, I think, what is landscape here? Okay. Yeah, I think that we thought about this. We didn't have this, okay, at first. We only have these 3 columns here, and then we had to decide how to categorize each of the clusters. You're absolutely right. Maybe these individual keywords do not represent landscape, but then for each of the groups, we would always open a bunch of photos to see if they make sense with the categories that we want. And it happens that the groups that we classified as landscape appreciation, we thought at the time, thinking on the old classification that we were doing visually, that corresponded to landscape appreciation. But it's just a matter of how these algorithms give the words. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. There was another question. Richard, were you?
Yes, so we've moved on one step from manual classification of photos going up to automatic classification of photos, but still it's a 2-stage process in using things like Google Vision. Your Google Vision is producing words, you're classifying the words.
Yeah.
So how could we use, are there AIs where you could classify directly, so the AI, instead of turning it into words and then you turning the words into ecosystem services? I'm thinking if we're going to do automated classification in kind of real time globally, then we need a system. We need a system where the AI identifies culturally ecosystem service the same way that we do. We look at the photo and we say, it's that.
Yeah.
So can we train AIs to do that?
Yeah, sure. There are lots of people doing these models to meet specific things, depending on what you want. For example, we are interested in cultural ecosystem services, so we can train an algorithm to be really good to identify our categories based on some training data set that we have manually classified as landscape, as
But I guess,
recreation.
is the problem the same with automated species identification, that it's good on the things you train it at,
Yeah,
but if you go to a new
if you
protected area,
generalize, yeah,
it's got no idea?
it's trapping. Yeah, there are some studies showing that some people are doing this analysis with camera traps, right? Because camera traps, you will usually have lots of photos, and you will analyze manually. Some people are using this, but there's a paper that says that if you cut the photographs, cut the background from the photographs only to the organisms that appear in the image, it's going to be really much more accurate than if you have the background with different backgrounds represent different biomes, different ecosystems.
Yeah.
It messes up with the analysis. So yeah, there are competitions of training of people training these algorithms to recognize categories of I don't know.
I mean, I thought it was horrifying
All
that
sorts of
the
things.
algorithm was identifying water as a person, for
Mhm.
example.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
really
because
makes-
that's really
Yeah.
general.
Yeah,
The-
and it really makes you realise that they're not, the algorithm isn't seeing.
Yeah,
It isn't really seeing
Yeah.
things. It's just analysing statistical patterns of
yeah,
pixels.
yeah. This is the price you have to pay for using a really general algorithm, right? Yeah.
Okay, I've got another much more tricky question, because we're receiving some people from the social sciences more recently, and we are opening ourselves to ecosystem services or cultural services, the value of art for biodiversity. But we are at the very end, we are empiricists who work with data. So, for example, I've been the papers I've been seeing using Flickr and other kinds of sources to track biodiversity are papers on floration, to track phenology, because the people like flowers, and they take a picture of the first flower coming, so you can track when do the seagulls arrive, for example, in time, when do the birds are arriving, tracking phenology, or identifying particular things. We are used to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and on the other hand, we've got people here who works on the value for conservation. A lot of people doing that. So how can we use this kind of data, which are going to be more accessible with time? How can we use this exactly for preservation? Because you put the sample of I'm not going to say it right again, Gloucestershire or Gloucestershire. How is it? Gloucestershire? Gloucestershire. Yeah, I thought it was just you close your mouth
sure.
and it works better. And I see how that can be useful, but what for? My point is, what for? What is this useful for? So I know it's a tricky question, but you're a biologist, so just why should we mind about what people is taking pictures of? And how can we use it for applied conservation uses, or how can we use it to trick or to tweak people's preferences, which perhaps is one of the things we.
Yeah, it all depends on the data set that you are using, right? This is really, really interesting, and this is really described as a new field of science called ecology, where you get this bunch of big data and try to study specific behavior or phenology of species. So yeah, the example that you gave of identifying when is the time of flowering of species is great, great use of this type of data. But I think that we could foster the use of specific platforms for citizen science, targeting the type of photo that we want. if we want to unveil more about biodiversity in these photos. But it's not easy to create a new platform or to get access to the data of another platform. I mean, I'm using Flickr, but if I want to access data from another platform, from iNet or another platform, it's going to be a whole new
But let me be mean, because that's this is the data we can get. No, it's we try to shift the way of doing things in saying, okay, no, I want this data. Which is, this is what I mean with the what for. I want this data to do this, that will have this utility in nature conservation, for example, or in actually, or what is the point of measuring social ecosystem services in this way for us who are working in conservation? I'm going a bit more to the core of that. So how can we identify the right data for that and then look for that and go and, I don't know, ask, I was going to say Bill Gates, but probably he's not, one of these big guys who own the data, and say, okay, we want this to do this for preservation, and you can create that foundation that will give us the picture, so we are going to do these conservation measures in this way.
I don't know. I really have to think about that because, we have to use this to really make a difference in the real world, right? And this is really years behind from being included in local management, in protected areas management, in biology conservation. So it's you're right, it's a tricky question, and I wish I had the answer, but I think we have to find new ways to present this to managers and to people who can put this information into practice. Don't know if I answered that. But
Yeah, thank you. So it's a toolbox, but we don't know exactly how to use it right now.
Yeah.
That will be the,
uh-huh.
Okay. Well, that's for the new generations to decide if you can do something for that. But anyway, well, thanks, Felipe, for this. I hope
you.
this is provoking some thoughts around the audience.
Sure.
Felipe is going to stay with us in the museum until the 20th of January.
Yeah, 20th January.
Okay, so if you want to meet Felipe and ask more questions about that or think about new ideas in knowing the toolbox he's using, please let me know by email. Thank you.
Thank you.